What I reject is the ethnic analysis, is the base, childish, stupid ethnic analysis, which has found its way into this debate. So those who use ethnic analysis to justify the change have a problem. And those who use ethnic analysis to attack the change also have a problem. We are building one Ghana. That was the national goal from independence to today. We are building one Ghana. Every Ghanaian national is entitled to the resources in Accra and the resources in Paga equally. We are trying to build one Ghana. One Ghana is what we are trying to build. And we should stop this tribalism, this ethnicity, foolish ethnicity and so on, and focus attention on how to build this country and to take it forward. Take the next steps forward and so on. Stop this. I am completely disgusted. These people, some of these people, and then it's important for us also to note that the NPP is not united on this matter.
Yes, it's true. So
if we have to condemn, let's condemn the backward people in the NPP who are coming up with ethnic analysis and so on. You cannot rope them with people like Kojo Kyeremanteng who supports this change. Kojo Kyeremanteng says the change is fine. So Kojo Kyeremanteng and Afenyo Markin are different. They have different positions on this matter. So don't rope the whole of the NPP into this and condemn the NPP. Let's fish out the individuals who are backward, who don't understand our history, and deal with them. You understand? Yeah. That's my position. Okay. You see, there's so much to say. I mean, so much to say. So much to say. You travel around the world. Travel around the world. There's nowhere in the world that I have been that there's no monument honoring Nkrumah. As a matter of fact, the day after the elections, I also congratulated the New Patriotic Party for holding elections which turned out to be largely peaceful. I've heard many people say that there were no incidents at all. On the day of the election, I heard about 2 incidents. They were minor, they can be ignored, it doesn't take away the beauty of the elections. But to say that there were no incidents at all is not true. So there were some incidents which can't be ignored. Again, commentary in the elections gives the impression that nothing has happened in the NPP, and that the NPP, which won the 2020 elections, is intact and is still that NPP and so on. But there has been a clear, major event in the New Patriotic Party. As we speak, one of the kingpins of the party, and it doesn't matter whether you agree with him or you dislike him and so on. In 1991, 92, I was keenly aware of the role that Mr. Alan Kyeremanteng played in establishing the New Patriotic Party. You understand? I'm aware of what he did to raise funds for the party. Contributions that people like him made, even in shaping the philosophy of the party as well. So he's a real kingpin of the party. Now, if you consider the fact that he actually had run to be presidential candidate of the party and nearly pushed the elections into a second round, you cannot ignore him. Now, this figure and his supporters have left the NPP. They've not come back to the NPP. Okay. So they talk about unity of the party, they talk about the fact that the party is intact and so on. It's defective. You understand what I'm saying? Yes, you can talk about the unity of the party now. without Mr. Kyeremanteng. But then we have to realize that a substantial part of the party is no longer with the party, and there are no indications that it's coming back to the party. So that's an important point. Now, for me, the other important point, and nobody can deny it, and nobody has attempted to deny it. If you look at the amount of money that was spent as incentive for delegates to show up and vote, I should tell you something. Indeed, if the New Patriotic Party had announced that anybody who wanted to vote should come and vote, you can imagine the number of NDC, CPP, PNC people who would have rushed to go and vote. Because voting was not for free. Yes, sir. Today, 400 cities to go and vote. Can you imagine the numbers of people who would have gone to vote? Okay, so the turnout is also not an indication of the unity of the party, the popularity of the party, and so on, because of the major incentive which was provided for people, to go and vote in the elections. Now let's put that aside. We are hearing from the contestants and their supporters that they are united behind one candidate. And sometimes they go to the extent of saying that he's the most formidable candidate, he has a vision, and so on.
Rich ideas.
Now, if the person elected is that formidable, is visionary, knows the answers to the problems of this country and so on, why did they then contest him? You understand what I'm saying? A candidate has been elected. Those who contested him are now telling us that he's the best candidate to lead the party to the next election. Why did they contest him then? So they contested the best candidate. They didn't want the best candidate to become flag bearer. They didn't need a visionary to become flag bearer and so on. There's a problem with this posturing. You understand? There's a problem with this posturing. Now, the campaign messages are not hidden. They are not buried. They are available. If I take your phone now, and tap 1, 2, 3, everything will pop up. Everything will pop up. I don't want to repeat some of the things that they said, as Solomon has done. Solomon has gone to the extent of repeating some of the things that they said. But some of the things that they said are really frightening. If what they said were true about the person who has been elected as flag bearer of the party, and they said, you understand, why would anybody vote for him to become president of any country, not just Ghana, any country? So that problem is there. And they have a lot to explain. Those who contested Dr. Bawumia, those who described him as visionless, those who said that his academic qualifications could not translate into competence and so on, should come and tell us why today they are asking us to vote for the same person who is visionless, whose academic qualifications mean nothing, and so on. They need to do a lot more convincing. You understand? So that is also an issue that we can put aside for now. Now, it's important also to look at the figures, the results, the actual results. And if you look at the actual results, they are not comforting for the NPP and those in the NPP who want to win election 2028. You see, within the New Patriotic Party, based on the elections, it can't be argued that Dr. Bawumia's popularity has come down. In the last primary, he got around 61%. In this primary, he's getting almost 57%. Somebody must be able to explain this. How come that apparently his popularity within the New Patriotic Party is dropping? Now, in the last election, when he got 61%, I heard some of the pundits actually argue that going into an election, a national election with 61% of your own home-based support is terrible and may be an indication that he could not win the elections. Now, when the election results came, it turned out to be the most disastrous, the third most disastrous election result in the history of the Dankwa Buzia tradition. Today, it is not 61%, it's come down to less than 57%. What does that tell us about the possibility, of victory in 2028? Now, there's something else. I mean, now, there's no doubt at all, about the fact that the most credible polling organization in Ghana today is Global Info Analytics. Nobody doubts that. Okay. But beyond almost accurately predicting the outcome of the MPP primaries, they also did some pairing which was interesting. They paired Dr. Bawumia against all possible or potential candidates of the National Democratic Congress for the 2020 elections. 2028 election. Thank you. Now, it turned out that in that pairing, Mr. Julius Debra, current Chief of Staff, was the worst performing possible candidate of the National Democratic Congress for 2028. But even him beat Dr. Bawumia in the first round, 2028. His votes were around 50.2%. You understand? That should be worrying for the New Patriotic Party if what Global Info Analytics saw, and this poll was conducted in December, you understand, only 2 months ago. I mean, when he was pitched against people like Haruna Idrisu, Ato Forson and others, his performance was terrible. Okay. So again, it shows that there is something to worry about. On this score, we can say that, look, we still have 3 more years to go. And 3 years in political life is a very long time, and things can change. Yes, it is possible. Things can change. It is possible for what is today seen as the achievements of the Mahama administration to actually, go away. I mean, for example, we are now talking about the rate of inflation being 3.8. Nobody knows what the rate of inflation would be in 2028. Okay? Today, we are talking about the value of the cedi hovering around 10.2%, 10.2 cedis to $1 and so on. Fine. I'm not sure, I don't know, whether by 2028 that situation will still persist. Okay? Today, we are talking about debt to GDP ratio having improved significantly. Today, we are talking about how the country's debt stock has been substantially reduced. Today, we are talking about how the energy sector debt has been drastically reduced and so on. All of these are facts. And all of these are pluses for the Mahama administration. But the critical question is that will these indicators, will these figures remain the same in 2028? If they should change, what would the implications be for the 2028 elections? As we speak now, 2028, there are so many imponderable factors, you understand, that nobody can accurately predict the result of 2028. But common sense will teach us something interesting. And I'm talking about common sense, ordinary, pure common sense. Common sense would indicate that for the people of Ghana to change their mind and vote for the new patriotic party, the indicators, economic indicators, the social indicators, and so on, ought to be worse in 2028 than what they were in 2024 for that shift to occur. So if in 2024 the cedi is exchanging at 12.5 to $1, it would not be beneficial to the new patriotic party. If in 2024 the rate of inflation will be 7%, it can still not be beneficial for the new patriotic party and so on. The NDC must necessarily perform. NDC's performance must be worse than the NPP performance in 2024 for that flip, to occur. And sitting here, Senna, I don't know how that is going to happen. I don't know how that is going to happen. I mean, for any government's performance to be worse than the performance indicators in 2024, it will take some doing. You understand? It will take really some serious doing for us to arrive there. So, I'm not particularly optimistic about the chances of the new patriotic party. Now, you listen to them, all of them, including my brother in the studio, you listen to all of them, and what they say is that, if only they could unite. I don't think that election results spring from internal unity. It doesn't. I mean, to think that way is to underestimate a people. Elections substantially are about bread and butter issues, concrete issues which have relevance to the welfare of the people. So when we are going to elections, we are actually talking about access to potable water. We are talking about food, access to better nutrition, and so on. We are talking about national infrastructure, how people move around, and so on. It's part of the equation. We are talking about improvement in access and quality of education. They are even talking about sports and recreation and how all of this impacts on people. So you can unite all you want. If you are unable to convince the population that your assumption of office will lead to significant improvement in people's access to education and the quality of education, you are joking. Your unity doesn't mean anything. You can unite all you want. If you are not able to put forward a plan which suggests that national infrastructure will be substantially improved, you are joking. You can unite all you want if you are unable to convince the people of Ghana that food will be available and will be available at prices and conditions which will enable people's access to food to improve. You are joking. You understand? And to be honest with you, Senna, so far, so far, I haven't heard anything that suggests that these conditions would improve. And to be honest with you, very honest with you, the only candidate in that contest who spent considerable time talking about how to improve agriculture, how to improve the employment situation and so on, was Kennedy Agyapong. Kennedy Agyapong was the only one, you understand? I mean, his whole campaign was based on that. But he lost. Okay? He lost. And it's interesting. Now, since the elections, something else has happened in the New Patriotic Party. And last Thursday, I was reading the newspapers and I found a syndicated article, newspaper article, syndicated. And why I say that is syndicated, that the same article, word for word, was published in about 5, 6, 7 newspapers. You understand? Word for word. No, nothing changed. The same article in about 5, 6 newspapers. And this article was actually saying that, look, the party has to choose Dr. Matthew Opoku Prempeh as the running mate. Okay? And that if the party chose any other running mate, it would be a disaster. I hope some of you read that article. That article was offensive in the extreme. Because at the time when you're talking about party unity and the need for everybody, including contestants who lost, to rally around the candidate, that article was denigrating all other candidates and saying that they are unfit to be running mates. Now, if you run this kind of syndicated articles in the newspapers, how do you then expect the losing candidates to rally around when you are preaching and telling everybody that they are unfit? They cannot be running mates. They contested for flag bearership. They lost. And they are not qualified to be running mates. They are unfit to be running mates and so on. And we expect them to rally around. I mean, that's very strange. And that article was very, very damaging. You know. In any case, we've had apologies from Dr. Mahamadu Bawumia about the fact that a lot of mistakes were made in the campaign and also in government when he remained vice president or when he was vice president. Which were the errors which was made in the campaign? Did that include the selection of a running mate? And if that included, and I'm not saying it did include, I'm just asking, if it included the selection of a running mate, are they going to repeat that same mistake? I mean, I don't know. But these are the issues, these are the questions that need, to be answered now. Then I also see the effort to fan ethnic sentiments. It started all over again. You understand? And I'm worried about it. And I must confess that, to be honest, it is not only within the NPP that sentiments are being fanned as an election gimmick or election strategy. In the NDC, it's happening in the NDC too. But I see them in the New Patriotic Party, and I'm worried. I'm asking whether really the change that we are being promised by Bawumia is true or not. There's so much emphasis on choosing an Ashanti as running mate, with the argument that Ashanti continues to be the stronghold of the party, and that if the running mate is not chosen from Ashanti, then the party will be in crisis and so on. This is ethnic campaigning. This is ethnic campaigning on the basis of ethnicity, and I'm frightened, okay? Now, while saying this, I must confess that during the week there were also similar articles which appear to have been planted in the newspapers also by elements from the National Democratic Congress. And these included articles which were campaigning for Mr. Kojo Bonsu, currently ambassador to China. And these articles emphasize the fact that he's an Ashanti. You understand? So those who planted that article and those who planted the article about NAPO and so on, they are the same. Same backward thinking and so on. Now, I'm worried about the fact that ethnicity is on the rise, you know, in our political campaigning and so on. Then there's a trend which must also be very worrying for us. Maybe not that worrying, but a trend that is noticeable. And this trend was noticeable in the 2024 campaign. The trend to distance Dr. Mahamadu Bawumia from Nana Addo Akufo Addo and what appeared to be the failings of his administration. It hasn't gone away. It is still there. It is still there. And I've heard his supporters, or some of his supporters, say that now the apron strings with Akufo Addo have been cut, and cut for good, and that he will be his own man, and so on. I'm not so sure that that is a sensible way of campaigning. Because to have this as a campaign message would suggest very strongly that as vice president, he had very little influence. He could not in any way contribute to shaping policy within his own government. And you see, if as vice president he couldn't contribute to shaping policy within his own government, within cabinet and so on, how then can we expect him to help shape policy merely because, you know, he's now become the flag bearer and so on? Because when he won, he had to go to Nana Akufo Addo to pay obedience, obeisance, and so on. He had to go to President Kufuor and so on, which suggests that these people still have some influence within the party. And he cannot, you know, as it were, ignore them. But then there's something else. You all remember my very good friend, Dr. Martin Opoku Prempeh's claim which virtually said that Bawumia was the most sensible person in the last cabinet. Maybe he was. I wasn't there. I didn't take part in the cabinet meetings. I wouldn't know. Maybe we should believe NAPO. Now, if you have to believe NAPO, the question that arises is that if at cabinet meetings he demonstrated that he was the most sensible person, that was even far more sensible than the president himself, how come that this argument did not reflect in policy? Because you could only see his brilliance and so on if indeed he was able to convince his colleagues. He was able to do proper analysis of the issues that came before cabinet then and so on. But truth is that in spite of the fact that he was the most sensible person in cabinet as claimed by NAPO, he himself says that he made no impact. So what was the use of his sense? Sense that made no impact in cabinet? I don't know. Massa, 2028 is approaching. I'm a Ghanaian. What I want is that by the end of the 2028 December 7th election, there should be no reports of injuries and death at polling stations. By the end of the elections in December 2028, what I want to see is that we have elected a government that is focused on delivering on the aspirations of the Ghanaian people. We have elected a government that has plans to ensure that the resources of Ghana are owned by Ghanaians and exploited for the benefit of the Ghanaian people. What I want to see then is that we will elect a government which did not campaign on the basis of ethnicity, which did not tell us that Christians should vote for me because I'm a Christian, or that I was a Boy Scout, or Boys Brigade member and so on. What I want to see is a government which truly unites all of us. What I want to see is that we have a government which is not pandering, and this is a very serious issue for me, that we have a government which is not pandering to any one particular traditional authority against others. What I want to see is that we have elected a government which was paying respect to our traditions and culture and so on, understands that Ghana is a democratic constitutional republic in which there cannot be any kingdoms. You understand what I'm saying? So I'll start by stating that I am 500% in favor of changing the name from Kotoka International Airport to Accra International Airport. 500% in favor of that decision. What I reject is the ethnic analysis, is the base, childish, stupid ethnic analysis which has found its way into this debate. So those who use ethnic analysis to justify the change have a problem. And those who use ethnic analysis to attack the change also have a problem. We are building one Ghana. That was the national goal from independence to today. We are building one Ghana. Every Ghanaian national is entitled to the resources in Accra and the resources in Paga equally. The people of Paga are not entitled to the resources of Paga exclusively. In much the same way that the people of Ashanti are not entitled to the resources of Ashanti exclusively. We are building one Ghana. That is the national objective. Look, it's important, as Solomon Owusu said, to recognize the MPP's own recent history. Yes, the MPP went to court and got a court decision saying that all coup d'etats should not be celebrated. That's a decision which the MPP instigated, that all coup d'etats. It was not just the decision. The MPP went ahead and changed Sankara Circle to Obechebi Lamte Circle. So the MPP went ahead and took practical action to change the names of structures and places named after coup plotters and persons who executed coups. That is why today we have Akwaje Park instead of Sankara, Akwaje Interchange instead of Sankara Interchange. So if the MPP is to be consistent, it cannot be opposed to this proposal from the Mahama administration. Consistency requires that it toes the line. Now, there is something else which is very significant, and my brother has also mentioned it, that Nkrumah was not an angel. You know, the Preventive Detention Act was whatever. Fortunately, my brother, you are a lawyer. Show me one country, and I mean one country in the world, who does not have a Preventive Detention Act today. Show me one country in the world. If you look at our constitution today, under certain circumstances, citizens' rights are suspended. Go and read the provisions on the Declaration of what is it? Declaration of war and so on. Under some circumstances, the Patriot Act in the United States of America, is it not a preventive detention act? The Patriot Act. Britain has the same law. Germany has the same law. So to pretend that only the Nkrumah government instituted this law is dishonest. Because every government in the world has one form of preventive detention act or the other. And so I was right. It is under the Patriot Act that people were arrested all over the world without charge and trial and dumped at the Guantanamo Bay in Cuba by the United States of America. So let's be fair to the facts. In any case, what was the substantial difference between the Preventive Detention Act and the Protective Custody Law? What was the difference? This was the law under which all CPP activists, including pregnant women, were arrested and detained without charge or trial. So please, let's be fair to the facts. Preventive Detention Act cannot be put on the neck of the Convention People's Party and the CPP alone. Every government has had a Preventive Detention Act one way or the other. You see, we will have enough time to discuss these matters on Ghana's Day of Shame, the 24th of February. There will be a public forum on these matters. And that public forum will be transmitted live on Pan-African television. So those who have time, please listen. It will help. And those who can afford it, they should come to the headquarters of the Socialist Movement of Ghana, where these issues will be debated in detail by Ghanaians and non-Ghanaians together. People from the United States of America, so we'll all be there to discuss these matters in detail. But you see, the February 24th, 1966 coup was not an ordinary coup d'etat. It was not an ordinary coup d'etat. In fact, it's a very, very special coup d'etat. What went into it has not gone into any other coup d'etat in Ghana. Why? The evidence, and I'm talking about the evidence, is clear that this was a coup d'etat which was sponsored, planned, and executed by the Central Intelligence Agency of the United States of America. The evidence is in the declassified documents of the CIA. The evidence is in the testimony of Philip Aggie, who was one of the most prominent agents of the CIA. The evidence is in other testimonies, Philip Aggie and John Stockwell and so on. They've all written extensively about this. So let's get out of our illiteracy and read. The evidence is in a book titled The Great Deception, How Nkrumah Was Overthrown, which is the publication of the declassified documents of the CIA with comments. It's available at the Freedom Bookshop. You can get it right now. You understand? The evidence is in a book authored by J.D. Mahoney, the son of the U.S. ambassador at the time, using his father's documents and so on. He's provided the evidence to show that that coup was planned, instigated, supported, sponsored by the Central Intelligence Agency of the USA. So the evidence points to the fact that the 1966 coup was a direct foreign attack on national sovereignty. So those who are praising Kotuka for organizing the coup, they don't know the history. Kotuka was a small tool in the hands of the CIA for organizing the coup. And indeed, the historical evidence again is on YouTube. I interviewed Mr. A.K. Deku, who was one of the conspirators, Commissioner of Police, CID, and then Nkrumah, who became a Commissioner of the National Liberation Council. I interviewed him a few weeks before he died. A.K. Deku was chairman of the Council of Elders of the New Patriotic Party, and I interviewed him for a program on TV3 called Hot Issues. The whole program, as we speak, is on YouTube. Go there and listen to A.K. Deku. I asked A.K. Deku to evaluate Nkrumah. A.K. Deku said that Nkrumah is the best president that Africa has produced, not Ghana, Africa has produced. I asked him, why then did you join the conspiracy to overthrow him? He said to protect his life. And that if he had opted out of the conspiracy, he would have been killed. So he went along knowing that what he was doing was wrong. Okay? Put that aside. The key conspirator was not Kotoka. It was not a FIFA. The key conspirator for the 1966 coup was a Major Kwashi, who was resident at the 37 military hospital. It was in his house that the coup was plotted. But somehow the CIA decided not to play him up. So his name doesn't appear anywhere. The key conspirator was a Major Kwashi. The coup was plotted in his house at the 37 military hospital. You understand? So we have to understand these things. Now, I pity my nephew, Afenyo Markin. He's my nephew. You know, I really pity him. I mean, he's increasingly becoming pedestrian in his analysis. And I pity him. I actually feel sad for him. This, his drive into ethnicity. Where is the basis? That if you touch Kutuka, you have touched Evers. It's unbelievably childish. Now, let me explain something to you. The Convention People's Party, one of its strongholds was the Volta region. Okay? When the coup occurred, what Kotoka and his henchmen did to Voltarians is unbelievable. Reverend Goka, he was a minister in the Nkrumah government. He's one of those who was bundled and thrown into prison. Are you saying that Reverend Goka was not an Ewe or from the Volta region? He suffered at the hands of Kotoka. Not just that. One of the most prominent advocates of the CPP in the Volta region was in Qatar. His name was called Fiawo. His son became one of the big journalists in this country working for the Ghanaian Times and so on. Let them tell you their story about how they were treated after the 1966 coup, and come and tell me that Voltarians will go and struggle because Kotoka's name is being removed. Why? One of the consequences of the 1966 coup was the removal of people from the Volta region and Evers from high offices throughout the country, leading to the filing of the case which became known as Apollo 568. The leader, the person who mobilized and filed the case was called Salah. He was from the Volta region. To stop this nonsense. Do you know people in the Volta region who suffered? Check. The facts are there. The history is there. People in the Volta region suffered. They really were punished for supporting Nkrumah. So, to think that people of the Volta region will rise because Kotoka's name is being removed, we are dreaming, you are joking, you are ignorant. You don't know the history. As if you know the history, you would not put forward this baseless, childish argument. You understand? Now, there's so much to say, but we can't say it all.
Thank you.
But listen, my brother, and listen very carefully. I am all for naming the airport Accra International Airport. Because we are reverting to the status quo ante. Little controversy, no problem. If you come and argue that it should be named Kwame Nkrumah Airport, becomes a problem. Everybody is talking, you know, making unfounded statements and allegations and so on, Accra International Airport finished. And the reason why it should be named Accra International Airport is not because the airport is in Accra. Because if you accept the argument that you should name it Accra International Airport because the airport is in Accra, by extension of logic, it will lead to total chaos. Okay? It will mean, for example, that the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology in Kumasi should be renamed Kumasi University. By logical extension. And would that make sense? We are trying to build one Ghana. One Ghana is what we are trying to build. And we should stop this tribalism, this ethnicity, foolish ethnicity and so on, and focus attention on how to build this country and to take it forward. Take the next steps forward and so on. Stop this. I am completely disgusted. These people, some of these people, and then it's important for us also to note that the NPP is not united on this matter.
Yes, it's true.
So if we have to condemn, let's condemn the backward people in the NPP who are coming up with ethnic analysis and so on. You cannot rope them with people like Kojo Kyeremanteng who supports this change. Kojo Kyeremanteng says the change is fine. So Kojo Kyeremanteng and Afenyo Markin are different. They have different positions on this matter. So don't rope the whole of the NPP into this and condemn the NPP. Let's fish out the individuals who are backward, who don't understand our history and deal with them. You understand? Yeah. That's my position. Okay. You see, there's so much to say. I mean, so much to say. So much to say. You travel around the world. Travel around the world. There's nowhere in the world that I have been that there's no monument honoring Nkrumah. You go to Guinea. I mean, perhaps Guinea has the biggest statue of Nkrumah anywhere in the world. You go to Mali. Look, I went to Kenya 30 years ago. The major street in Kenya is named after Nkrumah. You go to South Africa, where? You go to Cuba. Nkrumah's statue has been erected in Havana. What's wrong with us?
You come to Ghana,
what is wrong with us?
Thank you.
Thanks for watching. Like and share the video. You can also drop your comment. Please don't forget to subscribe. Click on the bell to turn on the notification.